what I mean by that is knowing who you're dealing with on the internet is a very imperfect business, as I think everyone has figured out. And of course this protects privacy to some degree, but if you think of it only as a privacy protection, I think you're missing part of what I think is the deep issue that our culture is presented with. Anonymity on the internet supports privacy, but privacy is fundamentally the right to be let alone, not to be bothered, not to be troubled. Anonymity on the internet allows all of us to engage anonymously, actively, in all manner of transactions with other people. That's not the same as the right to be left alone. This is the only area of our civic life where we not only permit this, but defend it. And I think this is the deep issue the culture is going to have to come to grips with, because we do care about privacy, and we do care about the right to be left alone, and we do care about government and many of us commercial surveillance. But this fundamental issue between what we can do anonymously and under what conditions we can do it anonymously is the deep issue between privacy and security on the internet. Let me show you a couple of figures that I think ought to be of interest to you. And I'm talking now about a fairly recent study this year by Verizon done together with the U.S. Secret Service, and showing us, we're glad about this, there's a sharp downward turn in data records lost. The bad news, on the other hand, is that the number of incidents are really at record levels. And nobody knows exactly why this discrepancy. It may be that some of the big guys have been taken down by the FBI and the Secret Service, but there has been a big increase in the number of smaller attacks. Now, what gets the most attention are hospitality, retail, and financial services. And insofar as some of you work for, I realize I'm addressing an audience with what diverse focuses in your business. Hospitality, retail, and financial just take the cake. Everybody else trails off very quickly, as you can see. Look at what's being stolen. Again, you get payment card data right at the top. I mean, it's just taking the cake. And not only the number of incidents, but the number of records. Pause a minute and just look at that list. And then look at this version of it. I've highlighted three figures: sensitive organizational data, intellectual property, and classified information. Add them up quickly, you get to 19%. That means almost 1 in 5 incidents is not aimed at things like payment card data. It's not aimed at credit card stuff, but aimed at organizational information, plans, business plans, bid data, technology. That, in terms of the value of what's being stolen to our country, is what I think is the ball to keep one's eye on. And we're going to come back and talk about how law firms fit in this very quickly. This stuff is real and it's serious. This is General Alexander, one of my former bosses, talking this year about a U.S. company that recently lost $1 billion worth of IP over the course of just a couple of days. Technology that had been worked on for 2 decades. Stolen. Electronically stolen. My successor as the National Counterintelligence Executive, known as the NCIX, put out a great report late last year. Foreign economic collection and industrial espionage against the United States represents significant and growing threats to the nation's security, prosperity, and security. And the pace of this is accelerating. I'll boil this down to you, for you. What this means is that we're not only having to deal with in our business, because all of us in some way or another involved in security, me too. What we're dealing with is not only the commercial business against business secret stealing that has always gone on, but which is now enabled at a dramatically bigger scale. But also, private businesses are facing foreign intelligence services for which we are no match. Our businesses are no match. This is a reality. That's why I read you that story about Bloomberg first. Electronic thieves are frankly stripping us blind. And I'm not talking about pirating DVDs again and credit card data. All that's bad enough. But the technologies we're talking about cost billions to develop, and they're being bled out of laboratories remotely, slipping out after hours on thumb drives, walking into airports bound for foreign ports, or re-entering the country as finished products, so that in effect we're buying back our own technology. Engineering designs, energy data, advanced battery and braking technologies, chemicals and pharmaceuticals, and many other kinds of IP have been stolen in this way. This is part of, not the only part of, but part of a tidal flow of technology from west to east that threatens the prosperity of our country, of the West, of our children and our grandchildren. Now, the country really understands things that, people understand things that affect them directly, like identity theft. And they understand things that blow up. We're now talking about something of strategic importance, of tactical importance to us in our businesses, that's happening relentlessly, but is not blowing up. And it's hard to get the public's attention for that. It's been very hard, frankly, to get law firms' attention for this, as some of you know. What we're talking about is something that's really important, but not blowing up today. And as you know, the urgent often gets the attention that the important doesn't get. We've also lost strategically sensitive data about aircraft and ship design, radars, and other technologies that would in wartime cost many lives. The most famous example of this is probably the Navy's quiet electric drive. It cost $5 billion to develop, and the Chinese now have. The United States Navy can run submarines more quietly than a Lexus sedan. That's an extraordinary technological feat. But we're not the only ones who can do it right now. With China, we are, how do we think about China? We're in a really intensely difficult period with China. A prolonged period of managed conflict, mutual interdependence, and wary cooperation. This is not the Cold War revisited. In the Cold War, we didn't trade with the Warsaw Pact countries. We didn't go there. They didn't come here. This is not the situation now. In America, we tend to think of war and peace as a sort of binary toggle switch. It's on or it's off. Either we're sitting around the campfire, people are being honest with each other, or else, you send in the Marines. Life ain't like that. And it's intensively not like that now with China. Either of our countries had a major crisis will affect the other in a dramatic way. We trade with these guys. We invest there. They invest here, heavily, as you know. This is not the Cold War. This is a period of what I call between war and peace that the American public has a hard time digesting. You go tell an American businessman who's making 40, 50% on direct investment in China that's a hostile environment, he thinks you're crazy. But that same businessman's technology is being pilfered, being stolen. When he goes to China in a hotel, he's being tracked. His laptop has almost certainly been imaged. That is, in some sense, a hostile environment. But during my tenure in government, I saw two big changes in espionage, which I've been talking around now. I want to get exactly what they are. Of course, somebody says changes in espionage. Well, wait a minute. Espionage, spying is a very old business, right? Moses sent spies into Canaan, right? Joshua did it too. This is an old business. Spying, if it's not the oldest profession in the world, is the second oldest profession in the world. and the two actually go together very often. So what do I mean I saw changes in spying? Because the old stuff doesn't go away. When you're in the counterintelligence business, as I was, the old problems don't go away. You just get new ones in addition. The human spies aren't going away. But for one of the big changes is that spying used to be a retail business. And now, with the ability to exfiltrate huge amounts of information, it's a wholesale business. You can empty people out. One of my favorite ads a year and a half or so ago, somebody came out with a 64 gig thumb drive, and the advertising kicker on it was, now you can really take it all with you. Well, from a counterintelligence point of view, and that word sort of doesn't work. From an information security point of view, that's terrifying. Well, you walk out of anybody can walk out of a building with 64 gigabytes of information on the end of her keychain. And who knows it? Who's the wiser for it? Right? So that's one of the big changes. The Russians are also doing this, not just the Chinese are the leaders. They're really doing a full court press. But the Russians are also doing this in a serious way. The second big change in espionage, just in the last decade, has to do with the relentless targeting of the private sector, not for political military secrets, which was all espionage was, almost all espionage was about for thousands of years. You know, are they going to invade? What are their plans? What are their intentions? What's their equipment like? We want to know what their military is doing. We want to know what their State Department's thinking. I'm talking now about the relentless targeting of the private sector for reasons having just to do with technology, having nothing to do with political military affairs. That's why we're here this morning. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The Russians, by the way, are getting really smart. They figured out that you don't necessarily have to steal technology. If you set up a venture capital operation in Silicon Valley and offer relatively small investments to always cash-starved entrepreneurs and ask for applications for people who want this to describe their technology and what they're doing, they'll be the path to your door. And it's not illegal. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, for people who are really developing the, making investments, of course, that's not necessarily where it ends. And I've had clients come to me, and I've seen this 6 or 8 times in the last year and a half. 6 or 8 times, just me, one lawyer, one law firm, where I'm told, well, I asked the client, you got any other technology you don't want to sell them? Oh, yeah. But they're nice people to do business with. They invited us over to Russia. Oh, you took your laptop with you? Yeah. And your technology was loaded on it, everything you got? Yeah, sure. And that's when I got to explain to them that they may be doing a great deal on the technology they want to sell, and they may be giving away the rest of it, because that's how that happens. So, this is a different world than any of us grew up in. This is the way, a diplomat would have to contend with this kind of problems, but not an ordinary business person. As I say, our businesses are facing espionage attacks by foreign services. A few years ago, when I was the NCIX, the National Counterintelligence Executive, I was one after, late in the day, the phone stops ringing, the secretaries have gone home, you loosen your tie if you're wearing one, you put your feet on the desk. And I was talking to my deputy about how we'd do an espionage attack on an American business. And the light went on. I slapped the desk and said, of course, the law firms. Lawyers are arrogant. I can say this, right? Lawyers are arrogant. We don't like to be told what to do. We're impatient with security. Don't like spending money. And we have the secrets. We have so many secrets. And I'm sorry to tell you that I'm not the only person this has occurred to. Is that me? Yeah, sorry. I'm not the only person this has occurred to. Now, I can't tell you what I know, but I can tell you that I know this is going on. And I can't tell you everything I know. I told you about the Bloomberg episode. This is real stuff now. It's interesting because 5 or 6 years ago, let alone 10 or 20 years ago, nobody would be talking to a commercial audience about this problem. Nobody would have been. Nobody would have thought to do it. The kind of briefing I'm giving you now was only given to diplomats, military attachés, people going overseas, people handling very sensitive information. The only exceptions might have been major defense contractors. And now, what I'm describing is part of daily commercial life and the conditions under which we're doing business. And by the way, how many of you are confident that your own due diligence efforts or the due diligence efforts of the law firms you deal with are likely to turn up this kind of vulnerability? Huh? I don't see a lot of hands. Because a lot of lawyers don't understand this yet. Now, you can't generalize about law firms. It's very hard, or businesses. I think what one can say with complete accuracy is that the level of sophistication in dealing with this issue is all over the